Welcome back to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. My name is Lydia and I am your host and wedding photographer based in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. On today's episode, I'm chatting to Alex. She is a Kiwi living in London, and I chatted to her while she was home in New Zealand over the summer and also got married here a few years ago. You may know her from her Instagram page, Alex's Kitchen Story, where she shares simple, easy to follow and delicious recipes. So definitely go and check it out if you need some dinner inspiration. They are so yummy. Alex also has a podcast with her friend Emma called Takeaways Pod, and she did not ask me to plug this at all. We didn't even talk about it, but I've listened to quite a few of them and I love it. It's if you love like a chatty girl talk, relatable podcast about food, life, bit of pop culture, and especially if you've spent time living in London, just talking about their lives over there. I really enjoy it, so that's just a free little recce for you if you're needing something to listen to. Highly recommend. We chat all about her love story, meeting her husband at university, asking a family friend to get married on their private property, what it was like planning a wedding from the other side of the world, having to uninvite guests due to COVID restrictions last minute. She has some amazing advice and tips on how to stick to your priorities and focusing on key elements for your wedding. I know I always say it, but this is such a goodie and a must listen. I know that there is also a big percentage of listeners from the UK. And I know there's so many Kiwis that go and live in London like I did for a few years, or somewhere in the UK, and end up coming home to get married or planning their wedding back here where most of their family and friends still are. So I know that you will really enjoy this one, and we have a few more episodes coming up with Kiwis living in London who planned their wedding back here as well, so keep listening along. Alex's wedding was photographed by the amazing Johnny Scott, and you can jump over to our Instagram at the Kiwi Wedding Podcast to see some of their photos, and make sure you give us a follow as well. Enjoy episode 34 with Alex. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for jumping on the podcast with me today. So excited to chat all about your wedding.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice. I haven't thought about my wedding in a while, so I'm quite excited to go back down memory lane and revisit it all.
Just to start off with, if you could tell me a little bit about you and your partner, how you guys met, and your life together.
So, Sam and I met quite young when we were 18 at university. So we were both in uni college together in Dunedin. We both went down to study. He was the floor below me. And we met and became really good friends, and then kind of ended up in a relationship after that. And yeah, we've been together ever since. We, after uni, lived in Auckland for a little bit, flatted together in Auckland, and then moved over to London together, where we got engaged while we were living overseas, and then flew home, had our wedding in New Zealand, but then still living in London at the moment.
Amazing. And can you tell me a bit about your proposal story?
Yes, I can. So we actually, there's a kind of a group of restaurants, sorry, not restaurants, I guess boutique hotels in the UK called The Pig. And they're really, really cute, very quintessentially English. And they sort of take old homes and restore them into these hotels. And so we had one booked for our anniversary. Loads of people had recommended it to us. Lots of our friends had been before and really loved it. So we booked one in for our anniversary, and then COVID happened. We couldn't go. So we pushed the trip out to the end of the year. And I just thought it was going to be a rearranged trip. I had absolutely no idea that Sam was going to propose. So we kind of went away, and with Sam, in hindsight, like, he was trying to make it really special. Like, he went and like bought all this wine and food and like all these nice things that I like to take. But I just thought, because we hadn't had a chance to do the trip, I thought he was kind of going to a lot of effort for me. And so we went there, had our first night there, woke up that morning, had breakfast, and then went for a walk. And it's like these amazing woods. And we kind of walked, and then we basically got near the end, and most of it was quite muddy. And Sam loves shoes. He has like so many different pairs of shoes, and he had these sneakers on, and he was like desperately trying not to get them muddy the whole time. And so I was like, I had no idea what was going on. So I was filming him and sending it to all my friends, like, ha ha ha, look at him trying to jump out of the mud. And I had taken my gumboots, so I was thrilled. And then we basically got to the end of the walk, and I think I was pulled out my phone, and I was like looking at my phone, walking ahead, and then he called my name, and I turned around, and he was down on one knee, and he proposed.
Oh, that's such a cool story. I love that. And just so hilarious that you were filming and so got a bit of the surprise factor there.
Totally. I was so shocked, really shocked. We called my parents when we got back to the room, and my mum was like, "Oh my God, you're very pale." Like I was so shocked. I just hadn't seen it coming at all. I just couldn't believe it. But then we popped a bottle of champagne and all came right. I was so happy and so excited.
Cool, such an exciting moment for sure. And had you always been one of those girls that dreamed about what you wanted for your wedding, knew exactly what you wanted, and yeah, what was your kind of vision for the day? Did you have a style in mind? And yeah, how did you get started with the planning process?
I was really keen to get started like immediately. And yes, to answer your question, I was one of those girls who thought about my wedding a lot. Like I had big dreams for my wedding my whole life. And I think actually, I'm sure we'll get onto this later, but when the wedding was over, I was almost like, oh my God, that will, I mean, ideally your only wedding, but that is your only wedding. And you can no longer dream and imagine because it's done now. And I sort of found that quite hard to get over because I had thought about it for so many years. But yeah, I really wanted to start planning straight away. Sam was like, please, can we just have a month just to enjoy being engaged? And I actually found it really hard. I was like, no, I want to start right now. Um, so I kind of just went on in the background without him. And my sister is super creative. So she came up with four pillars, which is something I think she did at work. She's an architect, to kind of keep everything in theme. So I think one was orchard, one was, I don't know, a colour scheme. I honestly can't really remember what they were now, but basically every decision we made, we came back to those four pillars just to check that they stuck with the theme. And that I found that really helpful to do. I also found that as I was planning it, and you kind of go on these websites and there's so much stuff you can buy, it's really easy to move away from your original vision and what you always wanted because you can start just like adding in floors and stages and signage and all this kind of stuff. And I was always like, oh my God, do I need it? And people are always trying to upsell you. And so I had to keep myself like quite strict and be like, no, that isn't the vibe that I wanted. I didn't want a floor under the marquee. I didn't want a stage. I didn't want lots of signs. And just to remember that that is kind of what I wanted it to look like and come back to those four pillars each time.
Yeah, nice. That's such great advice just to have those guiding pillars that you keep coming back to.
Totally.
How did you go about finding the venue? Did you always kind of know where you wanted to get married, or what was that process like?
So my parents have a place up at Omaha. So we've done a lot of holidays up here, Sam and I both, and it was a really special place to both of us. So we really wanted to get married up here. Um, and I was really keen for my parents' place to host the day after as well. So I knew it sort of needed to be nearby so that people could find accommodation to suit both days. Um, and my parents have some friends who have a really big piece of land with an amazing house on it, and beautiful fruit trees. And she is the nicest, most easygoing, amazing lady. And mum said to me, maybe you should ask her if she would have the wedding on her property. So I absolutely loved the land as well. And so I emailed her name's Kate, I emailed her one night and was like, would you consider it? Blah, blah, blah. Like, please take your time. I know it's a huge ask, kind of this huge, lengthy email. And she came back to me and said, hi, Alex, yeah, sure, in the diary. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe you've said yes, let alone be so chilled with it. So they were amazingly generous and so amazing, and so helpful to us. And their property is absolutely beautiful. So we were thrilled.
Oh, so special. I love that. Just no questions asked. Like, yep, in the diaries. It's so
Literally,
good.
she was
And
amazing.
yeah, really unique to have somewhere that you haven't been to a lot of weddings before, or yeah, just a special spot for you guys. It's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. We were very lucky.
And what were the most important elements of the day for you, your kind of top priorities when it came to vendors or just the whole vibe and style of the day?
I really wanted to keep it all quite simple, so I just had one style of flower, which was the gypsophila baby's breath, some people call it. And I just knew that I kind of wanted that everywhere. I wanted like a big cloud of it above our table. I wanted it on all the tables, and I wanted everything to be like quite white and green. Even though Omaha is technically a beach location, their property is set quite far back from the water. You can't actually see the water. So we kind of wanted it to suit their property, and have the flowers be quite simple, have lots of greenery everywhere, lots of pots with big plants, and yeah, kind of keep to that colour scheme.
Yeah, nice. So stunning. Just really simple but classic, not going to date. And yeah, it looked so beautiful how it all came together.
Thank you.
And can you tell me a bit about your wedding outfits, your dress, how that whole process was?
So I was actually unbelievably lucky. I have a friend who I've been friends with since I think I was about 3 or 4 years old, Lucy McDonald, and she had worked at Amelia Wickstead in London designing wedding dresses for her. And she's super, super creative, and an incredible perfectionist. So she offered as a wedding gift to make my dress for me, design my dress for me, sorry. Um, and so I went through the process with her. We sat down, talked about kind of what I wanted. I'd sort of always imagined myself in a strapless dress. I wanted something quite big, and that is what I ended up wearing. But we totally went like around the houses and looked at different styles, talked about different options. She sketched stuff up for me, and we kind of made tweaks. And we went fabric shopping. I also went with my bridesmaids to try on dresses. Just like I went to Amelia Wickstead and tried on dresses there, in another little place just to get an idea of what I wanted. Um, Tried on literally everything. So like some just that I would never ever ever even consider, but when you're in the moment, you're like, oh, maybe I would consider it. So tried on stuff that was so un me, but just confirmed that it was un me and I didn't want it. Um, and yeah, then I went fabric shopping with Lucy, and then we found a seamstress who was up in Golders Green, which is sort of quite far from where I live, in a really predominantly Hasidic Jewish area. So I would tube up there for all of my fittings. And it was a really, really low key, just kind of looked like a normal alterations place. And people would just be in there getting their trousers altered. But the lady who made it was in there was a total perfectionist, and she had come recommended from the fabric shop where we bought the fabric from. So she was amazing to work with, and I'd go up there. I think it was each week or every second week, maybe, and just like get it slightly altered, and like changed a few things, that kind of thing. We never ended up doing anything in calico, which is, I think, the common process. You usually have the dress made up in calico and then the actual dress, but it was quite a simple design, so we just went straight for it. And we bought a lot of fabric as well, and had my veil as part of that as well. So had my veil made especially for me too. So it was a totally bespoke look, which was so cool. And Lucy, as I said, was such a perfectionist. She and the seamstress would often get quite annoyed at each other because they would both have sort of different ideas of how it was meant to go. Um, which was really funny seeing like the creative versus the seamstress at work, like what length the dress should be, how it should fit. Lucy wanted the panel down the front to be really straight, and they would like argue over that, and I would just be standing there in the dress like, oh my god, this is getting so awkward. But it came together so well, and it was so nice on the day, like having something that had been made to me and fitted me so perfectly. So I was really thrilled. I absolutely love it, and I've actually had a few requests from people to buy it or rent it, but I just can't bring myself to because it's just too special.
Oh, so special. Such a fun process to go through. And yeah, definitely lucky to have a friend like that and get something just fully customized to you. Turned out so beautiful. And can you tell me who was in your bridal party and yeah, how did you find that process choosing them? Was that quite easy?
Yeah, it was really simple actually. It was very obvious for me. So I had um, one of my friends, Emily, who I've been friends with since year one at school. So we did 13 years of school together, uni together, and lived in London together. Not in the same house necessarily, but went on those life adventures together. And then I had Fran, who's also one of my oldest friends from school, again, was at uni with me and London with me. And then Hannah, who I met at university. So we were in Dunedin together and then in London together too. And then my sister, who was my maid of honour, which was a very obvious decision and a very easy one. And I was super lucky that at the time that all my wedding planning was going on, all of my bridesmaids all lived in London. So they came to my dress fittings with me, came to try on dresses with me. And the night that I asked them all, I just asked them each individually if they wanted to go out for dinner, and then said to come round to mine first. So then they came round to mine and then saw that each other were there. and they probably put two and two together at that stage. And then I think I just gave them a little present or something each. I can't remember. And asked them if they would be my bridesmaids, and then we went out for dinner. It was really fun.
That's so special, and so lucky that you were all there together. It's definitely, I don't know, special having your Kiwi friends. I spent a few years living in London, did that thing like many Kiwis do, but yeah, so cool when you're all together at the same time with your best friends, and special to go through that process. And how many guests did you have? Did you find that quite a difficult part of the process, narrowing down the guest list?
Yeah, I really, really did. Yeah, I remember Sam and I having so many battles over it. He had like quite an extensive list, which we had to cut back. I was a bit better at being more strict with it, but we ended up with a lot of people who we weren't able to invite, who we would have really loved to be there. Just budget concerns, really. Like you just can't afford to have everyone there. It's the reality of it, unfortunately. Um, but unfortunately for us, we got married during when New Zealand was still kind of in the thick of COVID. So we came back and actually had to do MIQ, which was absolute hell. And then we had, I think, I can't remember, I feel like you guys had like red, amber, green or something like that. And I can't remember which one you were in at the time, but basically we couldn't have more than 100 people at our wedding, and everyone had to be vaccinated. So we had to then cut the list in the lead up even more, and we did that quite late, which was a bit shit in hindsight. But I was determined that the rules might change, and I was like, oh, surely they're going to drop this now. um, we'll be able to just have everyone. And I sort of wanted to find a way around it, and then slowly realized, I think 2 weeks before, that actually that wasn't going to change. So we had to send some awful messages to people saying that we weren't able to accommodate them anymore, which was like one of the hardest things. I mean, probably not one of the hardest things I've had to do. That sounds overly dramatic, but it was such a hard thing to do and such a hard message to write. And like, I still cringe and think about it all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we had to do that. It was just so awful. So we ended up with, I think, 100 people on the day.
A tough time. I yeah, feel for people. Yeah, difficult. Just like yeah, so ruthless to just have to uninvite people, and yeah, like you say, so just cringe and awful sending off those messages. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone would have understood, and it was like the government forcing you to basically, but yeah, still so tough. And can you tell us a bit about your big day, how it all went down, and any highlights or favorite moments?
Yeah, so it was actually a really, really fun day. I sort of felt like I wasn't that stressed. Like, I think having my bridesmaids around me all getting ready together was so much fun. I loved that. Um, and then the only time I did feel a bit of stress was on arrival at the venue. No, actually, sorry. So we got married and then we went and had our photos taken, and then we came back, and Sam said to me on the way back in the car, um, I'm sorry to let you know, but they shorted us two chairs. So we've had to take two chairs from the Kate and Mark's dining room and put them as our head chairs. And I was like, oh my God, that's going to look so weird. Like, I don't even know if anyone would have noticed, but I remember being like that. I remember being really stressed out by that at the time. I was like, people are going to think we've found these like random special chairs for us because we didn't want to sit on the same chairs as the guests, and that just seemed so awful. And so I was quite stressed by that. But otherwise, I felt like it was a really stress-free day, um, and it was really, really fun. So we had these kind of old Land Rovers, which everyone drove in, and so the boys had one. The boys had two, I think, and we had one. No, sorry, we had two. I'm getting confused. We had two. I went with my dad in one, and my brother drove that car, and then my bridesmaids went in the other one. And then the groom's party had one as well. So they arrived first. Obviously, we came in afterwards. We had the two white ones. The boys had the green ones. Um, and then I walked down the aisle. We got married, and then as we came back up the aisle, Sam and I had just sort of like a minute by ourselves, and our wedding coordinator came and gave us a glass of champagne each. And I think that was one of my favorite moments. I was like, we're married. I'm so happy. We just got like 2 seconds of people not looking at us, 2 seconds by ourselves. And then we had all the family photos after that. And then we went and did our photos with our bridal party. And that was so much fun. So we went to this little jetty type thing with a little hut on it, and had some photos there. And the boys, thinking of everything as they do, bought booze and a speaker. And so we were kind of just all dancing in there, having drinks. It was so much fun, a massive highlight for me. I loved it. And then obviously coming back and re-entering the marquee and getting to see everyone, and even just the moments in between the speeches going around. I tried to make an effort to go around to all the tables to say hi and thank people for coming. And I loved that as well. Just getting to speak to people one on one was really nice and really special.
Oh, so cool. So many special moments. And yeah, good to just be intentional about catching up with everyone and even, yeah, factoring in that time of just the two of you and then with your bridal party as well. Sounds like an epic day.
It was amazing. I honestly love it. It's making me want to relive it.
What did you find the hardest about the wedding planning process? And yeah, is there anything you look back on and would do differently? Obviously, the COVID stuff would have been really tough, but yeah, anything else there?
Yeah, if I could get rid of COVID, I would definitely do that. I think the wedding planning process surprised me at how kind of all consuming it was a lot. I was really lucky. Sam is quite a control freak, so he really wanted to be like super involved, and he ran a very tight budget. He was across all of the quotes coming in, all the numbers, nothing kind of was dropped or missed on that side of things. And then that was amazing because then he could keep our parents up to date with what was going on as well. So we were really lucky. Both our parents wanted to contribute to the wedding, which was amazing. Like we wouldn't have been able to do it without them. Um, so he was able to keep them updated with what was happening with the costs, and that kind of thing. And then they had full transparency of everything, which was amazing and so helpful, and not something I would have been able to do. I'm like hopeless with that kind of thing. It just would have been an absolute mess. Um, but yeah, I found it all quite consuming. And sort of afterwards, when I didn't have to think about it anymore, I felt like there was a huge hole in my life where, I suddenly had all this time and I didn't really know what to do with it. And yeah, it had obviously been on my mind, even when you're not necessarily doing anything or actioning anything. It's on your mind so much, and I felt a bit lost kind of afterwards. Yeah, which I didn't expect. I sort of thought once if you were doing tasks, you'd be in it, and then you wouldn't need to think about it otherwise. But I'm not really sure why I thought that. Was quite naive, I guess. The other part that was sort of hard for us was we were organising it from overseas. So every time we had to speak to our vendors, it had to be either really early in the morning or really late at night. Um, so like that was quite challenging, and I think that sort of also was part of why I felt a bit lost afterwards, because I suddenly had mornings and evenings free again, wasn't having to respond to emails that had come in overnight or make phone calls, or video chats. Yeah, so that was a challenge.
Yeah, definitely a difficult time zone to work with sometimes. And yeah, added challenge just planning a wedding from the other side of the world. And yeah, you touched on budget a little bit there, but yeah, was there anything in that side of things, if you can remember, that was like surprised you cost wise, or yeah, did you end up going over the budget?
So our wedding was a couple of years ago now, so I don't know if this has changed, but I just remember being shocked that every single quote came in, other than like the really big ones, obviously at 5 grand. Like everybody just charged 5 grand for everything. I felt like that was a standard price that we would just get back. Um, Everything was a lot more expensive than I thought, so we naively went into it thinking, oh, we'll be able to, because it's on a private property, we'll be able to bring all of our own booze and that kind of thing. So we thought we'd be able to run it reasonably cheap, but you actually just can't. And I think everybody learns that as they go into it, that it's actually just not. You can't make a wedding cost efficient really, unless you had really small guests, I guess, like a small guest list, which we didn't. Um, so I found that quite surprising. And then afterwards, what we hadn't factored in was things sort of went wrong on the day. So I was meant to have a whole lot of non-alcoholic drinks, which hadn't made it to the wedding. So our caterers then had to go and buy non-alcoholic drinks other than sparkling water, to have there, and then they charge you for that time and buying that. Things like our none of our linen for the tables had arrived the day before. It had all got lost in New Zealand Post, which was very stressful. But luckily, my bridesmaids the night before went online and just sorted it out and just ordered some. They were just plain white tablecloths, so they weren't like nice sort of like linen as such as I wanted, but hopefully nobody noticed. I mean, I didn't even notice on the day. Um, so we had to get all new napkins and tablecloths literally the night before. I think can't remember if they were delivered or someone had to go and pick them up, but I remember it being a drama. But anyway, our caterers then obviously have to charge for that because that was arrived really late. It didn't arrive until midday, and so then they had to do extra labour putting all the tables together. So there were just sort of things that went wrong that we hadn't accounted for that then go into your bill, and you get this big bill at the end, which is nobody's fault, but it is just the reality of it, and not something we were kind of thinking or planning for. So that was a little bit of a shock. Um, but otherwise, yeah, it is just an expensive exercise, isn't it? It's worth it, but it's expensive.
Yeah, totally. There is always some of those unexpected costs that yeah, you can't plan for, but yeah, maybe have to try and factor in. And I think especially private property weddings, a lot of people think, oh, we'll do it all ourselves, so we'll save heaps of money, but sometimes they can be even more than just like rocking up to a venue. So
Definitely, I do actually think the private property thing ends up being more expensive than the venue because I think the venue can give you kind of like a package deal that you just don't get when you're doing it privately yourself.
yeah, absolutely. And did you guys go on honeymoon straight away? And what did planning that look like?
So we had many big ideas for our honeymoon, which after a wedding our budget was not allowing for. So we had to scale back, but because we do live in London, we were able to go to Greece quite easily. So we did, I think it was 10 days or 2 weeks, I can't quite remember, in can't remember the name of the island now. I think it was Paros and then Santorini at the end for a few nights. And it was honestly so nice. We waited until October to go, just because Greece is so hot over the peak summer and also so busy and expensive. So we went October, kind of stretched out our summer. London was very autumnal by October, as you can imagine. And Greece was still nice and hot and sunny. So yeah, we got a long extended summer by doing that, which was really nice. And it was so chill. The island, I mean, Santorini is always busy. It was still really busy, but Paros was very empty. So we went to these beaches and like there was hardly anyone there. We went to a restaurant, sort of beach, a restaurant essentially with lounges on like a small little cove. Um, that loads of people had recommended, and they said you had to book really far in advance. And we hadn't booked, and we just turned up on the day, and there was like two other people there, so it was actually a really nice time to go. And it was quite nice as well, not doing it straight after and getting to kind of wait and have something more to look forward to, because the wedding blues are a definite thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a beautiful spot. And so many people say that, but it's definitely a good way to do it. Just wait a while and be looking forward to that and kind of keep the yeah, happy wedding day vibes going.
Totally.
And if you can remember, was there any helpful like websites, apps, resources that you used during the planning process?
I actually just found Instagram the most helpful. Like, loads of people use Pinterest, I know, but I have never really got around Pinterest. So I just used Instagram, and I just had folders where I would save things that I liked. Um, the Lots of the wedding vendors do sort of tend to post the same kind of stuff. So I actually found following hashtags quite helpful, because then I mean, and rightly so, they tend to post like the huge budget weddings, which have like enormous amounts of flowers and greenery and all that kind of thing, which are absolutely beautiful, so inspirational. And if I had organised those weddings, I would absolutely be posting them. But often when it's not a reality, if you can follow hashtags, so like I think I followed hashtag Matakana wedding, New Zealand wedding, Omaha wedding, those sorts of things. And then people would post their own wedding that was maybe a bit more in line with what I was trying to do, budget wise. And so then you could actually see sort of a more realistic inspiration. So I found that really, really helpful.
Yeah, so good. That's a great tip as well. I think people forget about the hashtag thing, but yeah, a good way to just see people that have yeah, been married in your area or at that same venue when you're planning. Do you have any advice that you would give to couples that are planning their wedding at the moment?
I think I would just say the four pillar thing that I touched on earlier, I think was my most helpful thing that I had when planning the wedding. Just write, sort of, even if it's not in pillars, just write down kind of what you want at the start, and just keep coming back to that with every decision that you make, because it is so easy to see what other people are doing and think, oh my God, I need that. That's, everybody has it, and it's quite easy just to fall into that trap, because especially when you've got so much to think about. It's easy just to add to cart, something else when you're kind of on a higher website. But if you can actually think about what you want it to look like, um, I don't know, for me, I wanted it to look sort of like a wedding, but slightly different from like the every single day things that you see. So coming back to those pillars or those ideas that you had right at the start is really, really helpful. And then my other piece of advice would just be like, take your time, like try not to rush it. Don't rush decisions. Give yourself enough time to plan the wedding so that you can A, save the money for it, and B, you can think about what you want and you're not making rush decisions. And you can choose the vendors that you want, the photographer that you want, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, nice. That's such great advice. And what is married life like now? Do you feel like you sort of mentioned that you got the post-wedding blues a bit, or yeah, there was a bit of a kind of come down after the wedding?
Oh my God, so much. I found it so hard after the wedding. I genuinely thought people were being dramatic when they talked about the post-wedding blues. But I found it really, really hard. As I said, I felt a bit lost. I felt a bit empty. Um, I found that, yeah, really, really challenging. I think as well, we just had a summer in New Zealand, and then we got back to London and it was winter. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? This is awful. Back to work, never fun. But yeah, so I struggled with that a bit. But otherwise, married life has been great. I felt like I sort of thought nothing would change for Sam and I. We've been together for such a long time, and we're obviously engaged for a year, so I didn't expect anything to change in our relationship. But I really felt like after we got married, it did change. It's hard to articulate why, but I felt like we just sort of leveled up a bit. We seemed like a bit closer, more of a team, more of a partnership. I don't really know how or why, but I sort of did feel like it was different. Um, and we always wanted 1 year married just to have fun, especially post COVID, do our trips and kind of live a free life. And at that stage, the UK had released all their restrictions. So we had like a really fun year, just 1 year as a married couple. And then we started trying for a baby, and now we have George.
Oh, so special. It's such a cool way to do it, just soak in that married life and just be able to call him your husband. Like, I don't know what it is,
Definitely.
not much really changes, but it is something special about it.
Very special. I loved that.
Do you have any marriage advice from your couple of years of marriage that you'd want to share?
Oh God, that is such a hard question. I honestly don't know. I think just try and have fun together as much as you can. Like they sort of are like a best friend, you know. You're living together under the same roof, life can be really serious. So just make sure you do have those moments of fun. And I think that makes all the difference on the hard days.
Yeah, so good. Such great advice. Amazing. So lovely to chat to you. Is there anything else you want to add on as we wrap up or say to engage people listening?
No, just a big congratulations and good luck for anyone planning their wedding. It's such an exciting time, and then try and enjoy the planning process as much as you can, as well as the actual day.
Yay, so good. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much.